All right, let's just jump right into it. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to set the stage for the incredibly dramatic, bloody, and honestly completely fascinating end of the world's most famous pirate. We're taking a really close look at the unbelievable events of 1718. We're stripping away all those Hollywood myths to see the real, tactical, and frankly shocking history of Edward Teach, who you probably know much better as Blackbeard.
So, think about this for a second. How exactly did a literal pirate's paradise along the coast of North Carolina lead directly to his grave through a highly secretive cross-border assassination plot? It's wild, right? To really grasp how Blackbeard met his absolute buzzsaw of an end, we first have to understand the land and the water that made him so incredibly successful in the first place.
Section 1. A pirate's perfect paradise. The perfect hideout.
Picture this. You've got two neighboring colonies that could not be more completely different. On one hand, you have Virginia. Think deep, easily navigatable trade routes, along with some seriously strict moral laws heavily influenced by Puritan beliefs. But then you look at North Carolina. The coastline was just totally blocked by the Outer Banks. We're talking a massive maze of shallow waters, constantly shifting sandbars, and super treacherous areas like the Frying Pan Shoals. Now, if you're piloting a massive, deep-draft British Royal Navy warship, that is a total navigational nightmare. But if you're a pirate running a smaller, nimble little sloop, it was quite literally the perfect place to hide out, scrape the barnacles off your hull in some isolated creek, and then just ambush passing ships without any warning at all.
Enter Edward Teach, the legendary Blackbeard. He totally leveraged this exact geography, basically turning Ocracoke Island into his own personal operational headquarters. The shallow waters of Pamlico Sound gave him unbelievable cover. I mean, his crew even set up this makeshift camp right on the island, throwing these wild, legendary pirate parties under the stars near what we now call Springer's Point. But here's the thing that always surprises people. Blackbeard's absolute peak was incredibly short. It was basically a flash in the pan. In the fall of 1717, he captures a French slaver called the Concorde, which he infamously renames the Queen Anne's Revenge. Fast forward just a few months to June 1718, and he deliberately grounds that very same ship near Beaufort Inlet, seeking out a royal pardon and looking for, a shady sort of retirement. And yet, by November 22nd of that exact same year, he would be dead at Ocracoke.
Section 2. The Corrupt Carolina Connection. Carolina's Pirate Allies.
So, why Carolina? Well, the local economics made early North Carolina uniquely primed for piracy. Because of all those geographical barriers we talked about, the colony was completely isolated from the booming Atlantic trade. They had to transport all their exports overland, which meant the quality tanked, leading to a massive scarcity of actual hard currency. So, you got this struggling colony with a pretty informal, loose government made up mostly of local landowners. When pirates sail into town offering cheap, smuggled luxury goods in a way to totally bypass those strict British trade laws, they weren't seen as terrifying criminals. A lot of folks welcomed them as necessary business partners.
It actually gets crazier. Blackbeard integrated himself into the local elite in a way that just seems completely bizarre to us today. He settles down in the inland port town of Bath. He marries a local girl named Mary Ormond. And, the absolute kicker, he gets a, quote, gracious pardon from none other than the governor of North Carolina himself, Charles Eden. Blackbeard was literally treated like a local celebrity, throwing these lavish dinners while keeping up deeply corrupt ties with the colony's highest-ranking officials. If you look at the actual Admiralty Court testimony, it reads straight out of a true crime thriller. You have witnesses reporting that pirates, quote, carried up the kegs and boxes of chocolate loaf sugar and sweetmeats about 12 or 1 o'clock in the night. And who are they delivering this to? Directly to the North Carolina Secretary of State, Tobias Knight. Blackbeard was literally dropping off pirated plunder right on the government's doorstep at 1 o'clock in the morning. You can't make this stuff up. Section 3. Virginia plans a secret strike. A secret naval plan. Which brings us to a really massive problem. How in the world do you catch a pirate when he's got the local government completely in his pocket? You obviously can't ask the local authorities for help because, well, they're the ones buying his stolen sugar in the middle of the night. So, this is the turning point. Virginia Governor Alexander Spotswood realizes he has to take totally drastic and highly illegal action. The guy was just exhausted by Blackbeard's nonstop raids. Plus, he was terrified that North Carolina's, quote, favorers of pirates would just tip Blackbeard off. So Spotswood organizes a completely covert military operation. He bypasses Governor Eden entirely and commissions Royal Navy Lieutenant Robert Maynard to execute a stealth ambush right on North Carolina soil.
Section 4. The Deadly Final Battle. A Deadly Confrontation.
All right, so the trap finally springs at dawn on November 22nd, 1718. Lieutenant Maynard's forces managed to corner Blackbeard in the shallow waters off Ocracoke Island, a spot that is now, very appropriately called, Teach's Hole. Now you have to picture this. It wasn't some grand chase out on the open ocean. It was a brutal, gritty, close-quarters brawl right in those shifting channels. Blackbeard was completely surprised, but he fought like a cornered animal. Cannon fire is just echoing across the water, the ships violently collide, and it instantly devolves into terrifying hand-to-hand combat on these bloody, slippery wooden decks.
5 and 20. Those are the brutal, mind-blowing numbers of Blackbeard's final moments. It took an absolute mountain of force to finally bring the pirate captain down. He was shot 5 separate times and slashed with swords more than 20 times by Maynard's men before he finally collapsed and died right there on the deck. It was just a spectacular, incredibly violent end to a truly larger-than-life figure.
And naturally, where the actual history stops, the wild mythology kicks right in. Because to prove that Blackbeard was actually dead, and, of course, to collect that sweet bounty money, Lieutenant Maynard decapitated him. And there's this incredible local legend around Ocracoke that claims Blackbeard's headless body actually swam 3 times around the ship before finally sinking down into the dark water. I mean, it's this thrilling piece of folklore that you'll still hear echoing across the island today.
Section 5. Blackbeard's Enduring Legacy. Blackbeard's Impact.
You know, we always get caught up in the Hollywood myths, right? The buried gold, the treasure maps. But the real treasure here is entirely archaeological. Remember the Queen Anne's Revenge? Discovered back in 1996 near Beaufort Inlet, it is the only pirate ship ever systematically and scientifically excavated. They have literally pulled up over 420,000 artifacts from the seafloor. And we aren't just talking about cool cannons and rusty swords here. They found everything all the way down to the ship's toilet near the captain's quarters. It gives us this totally unprecedented window into what 18th century maritime life was actually like.
And you know, today, North Carolina doesn't shy away from this gritty past at all. They totally lean into it. Blackbeard's footprint is everywhere. You can literally sail right through Teach's Hole Channel. You can check out hundreds of those salvaged artifacts at the North Carolina Maritime Museums. You can even grab a drink at 1718 Brewing in Ocracoke, obviously named for the year he died, or go to the annual Pirate Jamboree where the whole village just transforms back into an 18th century port. This crazy history is completely woven into the daily fabric of island life and tourism.
So I want to leave you with this one final, kind of provocative thought to chew on. Is history made by those who write the laws, or by those who spectacularly break them? Think about it. Blackbeard was a violent outlaw. He terrorized the coast, he bribed officials, and he met a really, really gruesome end in that bloody battle. And yet, 3 centuries later, it isn't Governor Eden or Governor Spotswood whose names are drawing thousands of visitors to the North Carolina coast every single year. It's the pirate. It's just a fascinating reminder of how outlaws and rebellion capture our imagination and ultimately how they end up writing the cultural history of a landscape.